So, I think it's time for the debate.
Here it comes.
And if you don't know what debate we're talking about,
Watch
listen
episode
to...
1.
No, listen to any fucking episode. No, I'm just kidding. That would be for Dead Cells.
Yo,
But,
or Transistor.
Or Transistor, yeah. Which we are doing.
Yeah. I like how you had to throw that in there to save face. No, guys, we're still doing it.
In the first episode, we had a huge debate about Zelda. And whether or not The Legend of Zelda, as a series, I want to make that clear, as a series, is an RPG.
See, I don't know if as a series
I think
it
there's an
does
issue
count
with
as
that already with that. But finish.
Okay,
Finish
all
up.
right.
No, but go ahead, finish up.
All right, well, then I'll just say, Legend of Zelda being an RPG. Right? Now, I say no.
Uh-huh. I'm totally opposed to that opinion. I'm 100% for it. It is. Maybe not as a whole series.
Okay.
But there definitely are some...
RPG elements? Is that what you're going to say?
I mean, throughout almost any game, you can
You can throw, like we even made the discussion at one point of, like, a shooter has RPG elements. Like fucking Call of Duty has RPG elements when you're talking about like prestige systems and you're leveling up in there, you know what I mean? Or like, you know.
But okay, all right.
I was talking about Hollow Knight and how charms can give you more, you know, I can jump higher, I can run faster, I can slash harder.
in the terms of like
So, okay, hold on. I want to set it up so that he knows what his role is here.
Okay.
Right?
Good. All right. That's
so, yeah, I was like, we can't just throw him to the wolves here.
Tattooed.
So we're both kind of going to present our case here.
Okay.
Right. And you have to use what expertise you have
as the RPG guy.
As the RPG guy.
Okay.
To establish, and I'm not going to say definitively, because I'm sure by the end of this, he's still going to think that it is, and I'm still going to think that it's not.
No, absolutely.
What it is for the listener to make a more constructed opinion of what is an RPG.
Absolutely.
Not necessarily at the end of the day you're going to convince anyone out there or in here as to whether or not Legend of Zelda actually is.
Absolutely.
We're basically just asking your opinion on these various small things, and we're presenting our case.
Absolutely.
All right.
Ready for it. Let's do it.
So, I'm going to let you take the first. Why do you think Legend of Zelda is an RPG?
Well, I don't think that every single one can be deemed an RPG.
Okay, then you need to specify which one you're talking about, because I will combat you on each of them.
On each of them? Good luck.
Pretty much.
So, in Breath of the Wild...
is going to be the hardest one.
The hardest one, and that's the one I'm going to start out with.
That's fine. That's fine.
Cool. Because not only does do the weapons have a durability, break, and attack stat, they do have hidden stats towards like the shields that have their own durability, their own fucking number system, how much damage they can take. I actually watched a video on how the shield can take a certain amount of hits depending on how strong its enemy output is. It's interesting.
If your defense rating on a shield is 3 and you get attacked by a bokoblin, little mini Goomba level of an enemy, you can take 25 hits, or let's say. If you get hit by... I'm not talking about specifics on that. I'm just saying, like,
the concept.
You can take 25 hits on that. If you get hit by a Lionel, a higher level enemy, you can take 3. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, conceptually, like, I'm not talking about, like, specific numbers.
Yeah. But there also are because of the variety of shields. Yeah, there's grades of shields that have higher damage output or durability output. Yeah,
which they break after a certain amount of time. Or not a certain amount of time, a certain amount of hits.
Yeah.
Same thing with your weapons.
Gotcha.
Even if it's a spell casting like a wand or something like that, or even a
bow.
bow.
Number of uses.
Number of uses.
Yeah.
And you can see the rating in numbers. I'm giving you I'm giving you ammo here. You know?
No, I know.
Go ahead.
There's numbers.
Yeah.
Just like the clothes has armor rating, just like food gives you a percentage of health back, or all health back, or even bonus health back, depending on how good you make your food, because cooking and extracurriculars like grabbing, harvesting, and keeping items, hoarding. You're
making a case for RPGs here. Go ahead.
That all happens in RPGs.
I'm
RPGs. You hoard everything until you need gold, I guess.
But is that really like a specific thing that you do in RPGs?
Yeah,
I would kind of agree with that.
But would you say that that's an attribute of RPGs? is what I'm saying.
Having
I think
support
I think
and-
like a majority of them have a little bit of that. I definitely find that with a lot of RPGs I play, like I have like max potions. I for some reason with hoarding
You
to
never
like the
use
final.
till, like,
yeah,
the
and I was like,
last
oh,
battle.
I'm gonna need this, bro. And like
Yeah.
I have like
And you never use it.
79 of them, and I'm like,
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
You're at the final boss, like I don't know. I might need them later.
Yeah,
I don't.
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I think like that's a little bit fair.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like even the
My
Skyrim,
point there,
you hoard shit.
my only rebuttal there is that I don't see that as a specific attribute of RPGs. As like,
Do you hoard
hoarding-
items in platformers?
You don't get items in a platformer.
Okay, what about like in a shooter?
That's not necessarily true. Super Mario 3, you can flip over the little icon where your life and the world
Yeah.
3 is, and you can hoard as many pickups as you want. The
Okay.
frog suit, the cloud, the little magic flute with the tornado guy. Like,
Are you calling Super Mario 3 an RPG?
no, but I'm
Okay.
saying that you can
It's
that
I
you
think
can
it's a-
hoard
yeah,
items
a
in.
Got you.
possibility.
You're
Yeah.
proving my point. But go ahead.
Well, no, I'm just saying that you can.
Okay.
Or he's
I-
saying there's an RPG element in Super Mario 3.
Fair enough. He just gave you one on that one.
I
appreciate it.
I have no sides. Hold on.
Hold on.
Yeah, no,
RPG guy.
You're being impartial here. You're being impartial.
RPG guy, I appreciate that.
Yeah, no. It was a good. It's a good line. Yeah.
No, but I do think item hoarding, or at least like the feeling that you need to item hoarding, I think is pretty. I would say is common in RPG. Like
Okay.
you feel like you have to, even though you probably don't need to. Like you know you're gonna pick up a potion like maybe
Uh-huh.
10 steps from now.
Yeah.
But for some reason, like I gotta hold this potion. I don't know why.
Hell,
but-
even think of
No, Oblivion, like fucking. I got
I was
to
just
the
gonna
last,
say, think of Elder Scrolls.
Battle of Oblivion. I had hundreds of everything.
I had 30 rolls of cheese, and I don't know
No, I
why.
had like 500 rolls of cheese.
And
you
there's
know?
no reason why you collected those 5, but you felt something in the game told you I should hold on to.
Well, because it
this.
comes in handy when you're like.
Right, exactly. You have some kind of reason for why you keep it.
It's
Still,
there.
I still don't.
No, no,
Like, even that, I
no,
still
for
don't
sure.
think is like specific to RPGs. But I'm gonna go ahead.
I mean,
just continue.
One of your main arguments towards me has always been numbers.
Uh-huh.
And Zelda has numbers. You have to collect MacGuffins to increase your health. You have to collect MacGuffins to increase your stamina, which lets you run more, which lets you fly more, which lets you use X, Y, and Z more, whatever. There's dodging, parrying, all this like fucking counterattacking, which definitely is in RPGs.
Here's a question for you.
Yes.
For you. So in games like Bloodborne, which I acknowledge is an RPG, right?
Okay. Nope.
The aspect of you, or like Bloodborne, Dark Souls,
Yeah.
Souls likes.
Yep.
The fact that you get better at the game and your dodging ability, for example, or your ability to know exactly how long your sword swing is going to take, that kind of thing comes from the skill of you as the player, not your numbers
Right.
as a character,
Absolutely.
right? Which I equate to your ability to, for example, I'm playing Hollow Knight, my ability to jump and swing at specific times because I know I have enough time to heal real quick, or I have enough time to get a swing in real quick.
Right.
You know, in Crash Bandicoot, I know that I can make that jump, or I know I'm not moving fast enough to make that jump. You know, again, I don't think that's an attribute of RPGs. I see. So what you're saying here about your ability to parry and or dodge and or swing, like if you have a large weapon and you're swinging that large weapon, you know how much time you're gonna have before you're gonna be able to land that hit.
Okay.
I don't see that as an attribute
Because that's
of
an
RPGs.
input from the
player
to the character.
in terms of
Okay,
like
I'll give you that.
Like-
and I can agree with that.
that's not specific to RPGs,
well, no, that's
which is the argument I'm trying to make.
that becomes more like a game mechanic.
yeah, that's just yeah.
But I can agree with that point. That's
Okay.
fair.
Okay.
Go
That's
ahead.
fair.
Let me see. What else is there in Breath of the Wild that could be RPG-esque? RPG.
Well,
Not
I'll take
even
it for a
ask.
minute while you think.
Go
right?
ahead.
So, you know, the example I'm going to give here is a shooter, right? Your weapon, your gun, right, has a certain amount of damage it's going to do. A shotgun is going to do this amount of damage.
Okay.
Your machine gun is going to do this amount of damage. Your pistol is going to do this amount of damage. These are different amounts of damage. Same as you're saying, these different numbers for this sword does 12 damage. This sword does 10. This sword does 25, you know? Again, I don't see that as an attribute of RPGs, specifically. So,
Okay.
as you know, you've got your gun.
So I understand.
Okay.
You're creating a distinction between, let's say, like item numbers and your character numbers.
What do you mean by that?
So numbers being used vaguely, right? So like if an item has a stat, right? We're just gonna call it item numbers. Like that's not necessarily you're creating a distinction between your character overall. So like if I have no weapons equipped, right? These are my character's numbers, whatever my level is.
Yeah, you're creating a
distinction
speed,
between
your a strength, your
okay. So
that's what I'm putting across
that's the distinction
as part of.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understand what I'm listening. Sorry.
No, that's literally what you're doing here.
Okay.
So hold up.
Okay.
So I'm saying in an RPG, your stats as a character are things such as speed, charisma, strength, constitution, stuff like that. Which I understand is focused on like an ARPG, right? But those are affecting your actual ability to play the game. You're going to be able to do certain things if you have these stats in terms of I'm gonna swing this hard, I'm gonna run this fast.
To combat that,
go ahead.
In Breath of the Wild specifically, anyway, there are, and I know that this technically isn't the character himself, but
a temporary stat boost of running faster and or hitting harder.
No, well, I guess it is temporary depending on if you're wearing it, but there's definitely the Sheikah outfit that lets you sneak.
So an armor you're putting on, yes.
I mean, yeah, but it's still your character now that has that boosted stat. Okay. Not necessarily. It's not like the weapon I'm wielding let me do that. It's not like the shield I'm wielding let me do that. It's not like some extra item in my backpack let me do that. Well, it's what I'm wearing now.
Well, isn't like it's not. It's you're saying it's not an item on that I have in my backpack. It's an item that I have on.
Yeah, it's what I'm wearing.
So
now.
it's so is that not the same thing?
I think what he's trying to suggest is like the equivalent of, let's say, like you find a ring, like, oh, from where this ring is +1 to your magic stat, right? In that case, right, you are improving the character's personal stat, but it is with the help of an item, like it's augmented, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what he's kind of.
And in that case, right. I'm getting increased sneak, I'm getting increased climbing,
frost defense,
fire flame defense,
yep.
Which are stats. Okay,
I
think that's what he's presenting.
That's what he's getting to.
Which are
you're
stats,
right.
And it does change the gameplay enough because if you go to like a mountain and it's freezing, you put on something that stops you from freezing. Now you don't worry about losing health in that area. You know, you don't have to worry about, holy crap, I'm gonna freeze to death, or holy crap, I'm in the Goron's volcano and I'm burning.
But I see when you go to an area like that, like that's not the gameplay conceit that you're making. You're like for example, if you're going into an area that it's colder than you can handle, you put on something, yes, to protect yourself from the cold, let's say. But I see that the same way as like take the number away from it for a minute, just for the sake of example here, right? You're just going in and you have an item that is protect from cold, like in general, you know, or just it's like I'm going to this cold area. I put on a coat, just a coat, you know. The number itself is irrelevant.
Yeah.
It doesn't actually add
because of the effect.
Because the effect is what you're getting
seeking.
Here.
Okay.
You know, because the area there just so happens to be cold.
Sure.
You're saying I'm gonna put on a coat. You know. I still don't see that as something that is specific. That is an attribute of RPGs.
Okay. How about you give me your list of what constitutes an RPG?
If I could just interject real quick.
Go ahead.
So I think the only problem I have with that perspective is that.
On what perspective?
So with the example you gave, like let's take the number out and just say like, oh, it's cold, boom, boom, right? With a lot of RPGs, the item and the stat are intricately connected, so you can't really make that example work, right? Because the whole point of you putting on the equipment is that it messes with your personal number, right?
Well,
so like, I hear what you're saying, but I think that like. When you like split the weeds in that way, we're kind of like we're moving the goalpost just a bit, right?
Okay.
I hear what you're trying to say.
Okay.
Well, it's just one of those things where like I hear what you're saying, but it is kind of like the nature of these games are where like items
you ever play Crash Bandicoot?
Yeah, I mean.
All right, so you know Crash Bandicoot, you can if you're going through and you collect an Aku Aku mask, right? You're buffing your defense stat.
Yes.
So you now gain an extra health point. You're leveling up to a second health point.
No.
Right? Yes, you are, because you started with 1 health point.
But it's not a permanent thing.
No, that's permanence isn't what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about you're putting on this extra layer of protection on yourself for when if you get hit or if something happens to you, you have that extra level of protection, right? Are you talking about permanence?
I mean,
I'm sorry.
Okay, no, go ahead.
Because I'm just a little bit confused by your example, only because, just because it's like there's no, like if we're saying numbers is a part of the process, right, to determine RPG, right? There's no numbers in Crash Bandicoot.
This is what I'm saying,
right? But like. And I guess like what I'm presenting is this notion that with RPGs you cannot have an item that doesn't involve numbers. There's like it just doesn't exist.
Right? I agree.
Right. So like I feel like you're trying to like attack the idea of like it's the item per se, not the numbers of the character, right? But if the argument he's presenting is that the sneak, right, is essentially it's a part of his character's numbers, you can't separate the two, right? So if he's saying that Breath of the Wild, right, has items that in effect have numbers that are attached to you. Okay. Separating them is I guess just not
oxymoronic.
Well, like it's not having this conversation honestly, right? Because then it's like, okay, well let's imagine a world where they didn't do anything.
Well, but what I meant when I said that was what was the exact example that I had used where I was like
Crash Bandicoot with the
no before that. Remember I had said like
go in the cold, put a jacket on.
Going in the cold and putting a jacket on, right? For me, that I'm trying to think of a better example, of like where you're going into a specific environment. Like maybe Metroid is a better example. Like I'm racking my brain,
for sure, absolutely,
looking for something here, and what I'm saying here is like where. All right, hear me out for a second. In terms of the whole the taking the numbers out thing. Mm-hmm. Taking the numbers out and thinking of it as you will take damage if you go into this area without this item equipped, right? Okay. So you put on this item. It's a generic item that just protects you from this specific environment. Mm-hmm. Like you're on North Star or whatever, and you're going in and you're putting on this thing, right? Once you put it on, you're protected. That's it. Mm-hmm. There's no, like, the number almost doesn't matter.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Because you're going in and you're protected. Now that's just.
So I guess my counter to that.
Okay.
Not even like because I'm not taking a side, right?
No. I'm listening here. Like I'm not gonna give you shit for it.
No, you're good. So like take an RPG, right, where like poison is a stat, right? Mm-hmm. If I have an item that prevents poison. Technically, right, like your poison resistance would be a stat.
Would go up.
Even though it technically isn't increasing my poison resistance number, it's making me immune to poison, right?
Okay, that's a very good example. It's a very good example.
And that's the thing I think of like when you think like I hear what you're saying is the problem is when you start talking about like items in RPGs that they're just that intricate because there are like we talk about cards that are like hidden numbers, right? Mm-hmm. There are things that are just like I didn't know that like I had a defense stat that is measured this way, but if I put this on it, like
it stops you. Taking that.
So like we have to be careful when we start getting too much in the weeds with items.
Okay.
Right, but I do hear what you're saying. I just think that we have to be mindful of the fact
that's a good point. That's a good example. Like the poison stat thing. Sorry. I'm gonna say this again. Like,
no, you're good.
I'm so used to having a fucking microphone right here. I'm so not used to this. That's a really good point and such a good example of what I'm talking about here. Of like, so now I'm gonna kind of put my defense up then as to why I think Zelda is not an RPG.
Okay.
Which is not what I was doing before. What I was doing was defending against your perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
So when I'm playing a Zelda game, what my focus is on is running, jumping, climbing, slashing, defeating enemies, collecting things, adventuring, exploring, It's more of that physical movement around a space. I'm not focusing on the numbers. When I am putting on a coat, when I am putting on something that is defending me against poison or something such as that, that's just me just putting on something. It's not like I'm not looking at when I think of an RPG, I'm thinking of I need to level up this. I need to grind. I need to level up this stat so that I can use. When I attack something, my attack power is at this level, and I know that this thing is weak against this, and that's where my focus is. My focus in the game. Not saying that these kinds of things don't happen. If I'm gonna take an arrow and shoot it through a fire and burn something, my focus is on this fire is burning that thing, not that if I shoot this in this way, if I'm shooting a fire arrow, it's gonna do this amount of damage to this character, which is weak to this. Okay. I even talked about Pokemon earlier today. I talked about how if I'm using a water spell, if you think about it in a roundabout kind of a water spell against a fire type,
it does more.
It does more damage. Okay. That's what I'm focusing on. That's the point of what I'm doing.
Okay. While yes, I agree that Zelda doesn't necessarily have stats in the sense that, like, I don't know, I guess that type of combat, where it would be like I'm focusing on my numbers being higher than the enemy numbers. Because that's not what it is. It isn't. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's not what I'm saying here.
No. And I'm getting that.
Okay.
What I'm saying is there is ways to increase your damage output. Because while there may not be a...
Same thing if you got a shotgun, if you got a pistol.
But wait, hold on.
Sorry, I'm getting a little exasperated.
There's side quests in just about every Zelda game to upgrade. To upgrade your sword. Let's say you have a generic, I don't know, like. You hit it twice with the regular Master Sword, it dies. You get the powered up, fully maxed out Master Sword, and now it's done. Hell, you could shoot a beam across the way if you have full life, and boom, like you do get increased attack, you do get increased defense depending on if you're using the blue tunic, the red tunic, So there are definitely like stat increases, stat debuffing, like it's there. Is it loose? Yeah, but it's there.
Right. So I mean, if I can give you guys a couple seconds to think, as I kind of like do my little spiel here.
Okay.
Right. So I think like when I think about, because what it seems like you guys are doing a lot of is like, here's this point, right? Like this is why, and I think it's more of a checklist, right? So it's not about whether or not it has this thing. Does it have a certain number of things, right?
What I don't understand what you mean by that.
So, for example, when I think of an RPG, I think of like, is there a kind of vast and immersive world, right?
Yes.
That's one thing, right?
Yes,
but not,
it does.
Right? But not, right? But you could have like say BioShock, which I wouldn't say it as an RPG, right? But it has a vast and immersive world, so it's a thing that can be there, but it has to be grouped up with something else, right? I think that that point of numbers you bring up is. No, I think that maybe we focus a little too hard about like the hard numbers, but you're right. Like there should be some kind of monitoring of some kind of either a stat, some kind of stats, or like your party or something like that, right? Right. So you have those two together, like you have a more clearer sign, right? But like there's some games where like you can have that there and it doesn't matter, right? I think about this notion of player choice. Right, and so like this can be a little loose. Right?
Yeah, I was gonna say that. That's
but like I'm using it very loosely, right? Because like you can play an RPG that makes it look like you have choice, but like really, you have no real.
We talked about it today. We talked about
exactly. So but you feel the illusion of choice.
Yes.
Right. You at least feel like you are involved in the way the story is playing out. Right. Even in like say like Final Fantasy VIII, where like I know I have no influence on what's happening in the story, but I feel like what I'm doing influences the world.
You feel that in things such as like Uncharted, which you really don't have like any real choice. That's a very linear story.
For the record, guys, every single thing he's listed is a Zelda thing. Just saying.
No.
I'm just saying.
Okay. Hold up.
Yeah.
An immersive world.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I agree with it being a Zelda thing.
No, every single one of those things is in Zelda, is what I'm saying.
I mean, I almost want to go back and go through each of those things and show how those things are shown in so many other games.
Well, yes.
But that's what I'm saying.
Okay, here's my actual argument. Here's what my argument actually is.
Okay, absolutely.
My argument is not that Zelda doesn't have an immersive world. That's absolutely not what I'm fucking saying.
And that's not what I was suggesting.
I'm not saying that there isn't progression in a Zelda game.
And that's not what I'm suggesting either. Absolutely.
Mind you, I'm not talking about you, dude.
No.
No offense, kind of not talking to you in this one. But what I'm saying is trying to use. No, that's not what I'm saying. Because what I was gonna say was acting as though an immersive world equals RPG. That's just not true. Like, that doesn't equal RPG.
It doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
I know.
So then why you're acting as though it's an argument?
I simply said.
What I'm saying, okay, the thing that I'm trying to get down to, and one of the reasons we chose you to be here as that person, is because I want to get down to the nitty gritty as to what is an RPG that is not any other thing. It's not a shooter. It's not a racing game. It's not a fighting game. It's not a fucking, mind you, this is a nebulous concept. This is a nebulous thing.
Absolutely.
But I feel like a majority of people, and this is where we debate, this is where the actual debate comes in, is a majority of people can tell in some kind of way what an RPG is and what, let's say, an adventure game is, or what an action game is, or what a racing game is, or, there's all these different genres, which are all nebulous. They all cross over into each other. There's progression systems and RPG elements in racing games, in shooters, in all this kind of stuff. I just take, when you think about an RPG, you're thinking about these specific aspects, which I'm still nebulous on as to what exactly they are. And this is why I really wanted to talk to you about it.
Absolutely.
What are those things that specifically are RPGs? Like, what? This is what I'm trying to get into. This is what I'm trying to, and this is the thing, that, like, the actual art, like, that's what I'm trying to say in this conversation. But the actual argument I'm having is that I don't believe Zelda is, like, exclusively an RPG. Wait, let me finish. Let me finish my sentence. Okay. Because I know exactly what you were gonna say. Like, trust me.
Okay.
Are there RPG elements in Zelda? Yes, but there's RPG elements in a fuck ton of things.
Okay.
But if you put everything down to its base level, is Zelda an RPG first and foremost, and then everything else builds upon an RPG structure to create the rest of the game? Or is it an adventure game, which in and of itself is like such a nebulous concept? There's so many games that you go through fucking adventures. And fucking Call of Duty's an adventure game for all it's worth. You go all around the world. You fucking go through, you're crawling around in the snow, and then you're in the desert, and then you're this and that.
Absolutely.
But is the baseline of this series, or even if you want to focus on Breath of the Wild, which we are now, but if we're talking about Zelda, we can't just focus on Breath of the Wild. Is the baseline an RPG that is then built upon,
Right. So
that's where I'm going with this.
Right. So I think that, like,
I almost feel like we're arguing two different points, but go ahead.
I think what's important here is, like, reestablishing what the overarching question is, right? Like, because if the question is the Zelda series an RPG, then flat out no, right? Like, each game in some way kind of plays with, like, different mechanics.
They're so unique. Some have waggle controls, some have...
And from what I understand, like, I don't think, like, that specifically is what, like, I guess you're arguing. Because it sounds like when he said theories, you're like, no, I don't agree with. Like, I agree with you on that.
He's saying Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild has more RPG elements than any other Zelda game. I will admit that, but I will not say that Zelda Breath of the Wild is an RPG first and foremost.
I will say that while its base, as you stated, its base, its neutral foundation, is not RPG, not JRPG, not
ARPG.
Maybe
ARPG is closer to, but I still think it's not. But it's closer to an ARPG.
I'm sure that if we had the time to sit down with, like, Shigeru Miyamoto and be like, hey, when you made Zelda to be this sandbox world,
I think we already know the answer to that one.
To be a role-playing game, I think he'd say yes. I think he'd say that it's for you to sit into the role of this little kid.
This is another... Go ahead. I'm sorry. I keep interrupting you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Fuck.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think his entire intention, at first anyway, with the first Legend of Zelda, was to give everyone that experience, that role-playing experience of being a kid, no name, you're just this hero who saves this world. Now, is it RPG specific to what an RPG, I guess, by
don't think about my definition. Okay. I thought you were going to say my definition.
By standard definition? No. Do I see it that way? Do I see it as an RPG, as an action RPG, as an adventure RPG? Yes, I do. Me, personally. And if I don't change your mind on it, that's fine.
Remember, I said in the beginning, that's not the argument we're having. I'm not going to convince you, you're not going to convince me.
That's fine.
It's for the listeners to have a perspective on this, to have a view on this.
I do think that maybe, I think maybe your error is that you're focused a little too much on, the first and foremost, right? Because...
the fundamental.
Well, so, Borderlands, though, by that logic, is not an RPG. Because it's fundamental. It's a shooting.
But on a fundamental level, Borderlands is not an RPG.
But it is an RPG.
But it is an RPG. It has skill trees. It has levels.
It's like okay, if you start...
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I think that if you just go to, at the base level, it's this, well, then a lot of games get disqualified from that qualifier, right? Because Destiny is an RPG game. It's an MMORPG, right? Its base is shooting.
It is.
But you do have to manage stats. You do have to, you have to level up, and your gear helps contribute to that level. You have numbers, your guns do these damage, it increases your defense and things. Hold up. You have to collect the gear. So I think that when we just do that
on that one, on that perspective, on that new perspective, because neither of us reached that conclusion. I mean, neither of us brought up those examples. I almost feel like it's like you started a baseline, and you build upon a baseline, right? And then at a certain percentage, it becomes a fucking RPG. Because the same way that throughout this conversation, throughout this entire episode,
I think I was trying to hint at that when I started listening.
Yeah, you made a very good point. I was trying
to create a checklist. It's not
just
these things.
This is why he's here.
It's not just
my whole
these
thing
things, right?
while he was listing that is that all the things that he had listed at the time hit what a Zelda game has. That was my thing. That was all I said at that time.
But my thing
that's it.
And same fucking thing you're saying here is that those things aren't RPG specific things, right? So hold up. Let me get through this one, right?
Okay.
Talking about even Destiny, right? Destiny actually I would call not an RPG, right? Now hold up.
Okay, no, absolutely, I'm listening.
It's a shooter with RPG elements. It has a lot of RPG elements. Let's say it goes to 40% RPG elements, 60% shooter. Because what you're focusing on, what you're doing in your day-to-day when you go in, your moment-to-moment action, you're shooting. You're going in and you're fucking shooting, Your focus is you're looking down a scope and you're fucking firing and whatnot. Whereas let's take an actual RPG where it's Chrono Trigger, right? Where you're going in through Chrono Trigger.
That's different though, because that's a JRPG. Chrono Trigger is a JRPG.
Oblivion. Is that an ARPG?
Yeah.
Okay. So Oblivion, you're going in. I know I've said this. I've said this before, but stats. You are actually focusing on this. I remember when I played Oblivion, not for the first time, obviously, but after a couple playthroughs and whatnot, there's a troll who goes and turns a corner, and if you get behind him in just the right way, you can jump back and forth while crouching behind him and load. I did that for 4 hours.
Yep.
Loading up my stat of sneak and acrobatics. I loaded up those specific stats because I wanted those stats later on. I was thinking in the future about I want those stats. I want those numbers to be high. That's my focus. That's the actual thing I'm thinking about. The like when it comes down to Zelda, I think of Zelda as an adventure game, which I know is a nebulous statement. Like the actual, I think in general the genre of adventure game is like a weird nebula. Like everything takes you on a fucking adventure, but your focus, what you're actually focusing on, the thing that you're putting most attention to when you're playing Shin Megami, and stuff like that, is on what moves can I use here, and is this going to be strong against this guy? What stats do I have for this move, for this action that I'm going to take? You know what I mean? If you're focusing on something like just the decisions you're making, like let's take a quote unquote typical RPG attribute or element, the decisions that you're making in a storyline perspective.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, something like Telltale, you can call that an RPG if you're saying that is a specific attribute of RPGs, because you're paying attention to every single decision that you're making. Mm-hmm. If you're talking about some of the things that we talked about today, music, you know what I mean, like amazing music, or one of the things that you brought up previously that kept coming up was permanency of upgrades. You know, so is Metroid an RPG?
It has RPG elements.
Yes, but so does, like, I guess you could say 60% of games now, 70% of games now. Spider-Man has RPG elements, but I wouldn't call Spider-Man an RPG. You know, you are putting points
for sure
into a stat tree. It's even got a skill tree. Like, it's even more RPG, you know? But at the end of the day, are you focusing on what your stat is while you're fighting this dude, or are you focusing on punching this dude and trying to get as many hits in? And how can I swing around? And how can I, do a backflip and do a kick?
While
I
think
can
that,
I whip and
can
like...
I just for 2 seconds? I'm sorry.
No, by all means. Yeah.
I think where you lose me is that you're focusing a lot on a mechanic, right? When a mechanic is just a vehicle to experience the game, right? When you're playing Destiny, like, you're focused, like, sure, you're shooting, but, like, shooting is the mechanic, right? What I'm focused on when I'm Destiny is I'm grinding to get...
What are you focusing on when you are you playing an RPG?
So it depends on the RPG, though. Like, with Destiny, I'm focusing on what is my light level?
Mm-hmm.
How much, like, is it... Because there are actual elements to the gun. Like, is this gun going to be effective against this person because it shoots fire? Or do I need to switch out and switch it to, like, a void gun, right? I have to grind to get that better gear, to level up my light level and get those things, right? So I think that, like, you're focusing a little too hard on the mechanic.
Go to Shin Megami then. Okay. Like, let's go to, like, your bread and butter here.
If I may make one quick note, you keep bringing up JRPGs to argue RPGs, and I feel like you need to make the distinction in your mind between a JRPG and RPGs in general.
Because JRPGs are a little niche. I get. So I see what you're saying.
Okay, real quick. This isn't really, like, I'm not really getting into this, but I'm curious. What like, I have my idea of what a JRPG is and what an ARPG is. What are you considering the distinction between these two?
Well, a JRPG usually, if not almost always, has a turn-based battle system of some sort.
Okay.
And every game that you've tried to combat, like, well, if you look at Shin Megami is also turn-based. Chrono Trigger also turn-based.
I only use that as an example simply because, like, it was an example that I know that he could delve deep on. You know.
Okay. It was just something that I noticed that I was like,
no, that's fine. No. You've done nothing wrong there. You know, I'm not saying.
It was just an observation. I was just.
So when you asked me, like, what am I focusing, right? Like, I'm focusing on, like, sure, like, what numbers I'm bringing up. I think that, like,
leveling, grinding.
Sure, but I think where we're making distinction is, like, I think you have, like, a very static version of what these, not static.
Narrow.
Not narrow. It's just like this idea of numbers. I think for you is like, it's very, like, this is what it is. It can't.
It's a rigid
move all over, right?
Yeah.
And I think that when I'm playing Destiny,
I'm not disagreeing with you.
No. When I'm playing Destiny, I'm still focusing on numbers. I just don't think they're numbers as you perceive them to be, right?
But I don't know what you mean by that.
So you're looking at it as like, okay, like, my character stat, like, if I have none of these things ever equipped, right? Like, if I just go out and punch some stuff, like, my stats.
Well, no.
Like,
mind you,
conceptually.
When I play Destiny, I am thinking about the numbers. I'm thinking about, I want a fire weapon if I'm going to be fighting something that's weak to fire type thing, Like, I am, but I don't consider it an RPG, because there's a different feeling when I'm playing an RPG than when I'm playing something like Destiny, or when I'm playing...
So would you be willing to say Fallout is not an RPG?
Fallout is an ARPG on the same level as Oblivion is.
But I'm focusing on shooting. You see where I'm saying, like, you're getting too caught up in the mechanic.
I see what you're saying.
Right, like, you're a little too stuck on the mechanic.
Which, mind you, that is I mean, this has been established throughout the entire first season.
Yeah.
Is the fact that I am a mechanical,
Absolutely.
minded person. Like,
Absolutely.
my bread and butter is the game mechanics. Like, we've talked about games where we both love those games.
Absolutely.
And then you're talking about, like, oh, the this, the that. And I'm like, yeah, and the jumping, like, the way in which the actual arc of the jump is this. You know what I mean? Like the reason why I didn't play Hollow Knight originally was because it was stiff. And it was literally the mechanic of it. You know?
No, and so like, and I know that about you, where like definitely the mechanics.
Like that's where my focus is
sure.
in general. Like I'm talking about any game.
No, absolutely, absolutely.
Know?
I just think that when it can get a little deterministic, right? Where like if my game has shooting, right, and that's my main focus for experiencing the game.
Is there a shooting game that I would consider an RPG first and foremost?
But see,
no. I'm
the
thinking
phrasing right there.
The first and foremost.
It's the phrasing, right? The first and foremost part, because I think you're because you would exclude Fallout for that, right? And I don't think anyone. I think majority of but first and foremost, you're shooting.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people would disagree with the notion that it isn't an RPG, right? So like
same thing with Borderlands. If I can interject for a second, because Borderlands has skill trees, has leveling, has stats for your guns. Elements for weapons, fucking different
illusion
enemy
of
types.
Choice when you're doing quests.
Yeah, even
bosses. I knew this is where I was gonna go. Was at the end of this, we're gonna realize we're literally talking like we're focusing on two different things. You know what I mean? I knew this is where it was gonna go, but that's what I wanted. The fact that we actually acknowledge and realize we're literally talking about two different things. You know what I mean? Like.
I mean, I'm still dead set on Zelda has enough RPG elements to call it an RPG, but that's just me.
I don't. Like,
I will certainly say that the most recent one, I'm willing to give that title, right? Because I've heard about it. I've seen some things. Is it, like, the most RPG I've ever seen?
No.
Well,
no,
never.
Like,
I don't think it's that, right? No. But I do think that at this point, for that specific game, there are enough elements present where I can give it that title comfortably. Would I say the entire series is? Absolutely not, because every single game, like I've seen one that plays like the Pokemon Dungeon one, where you got like two people walking with you, you know, like walking down a path, right?
With that said,
with like a Game Boy game or something like that.
I'm just feel great about this real quick.
Well, like no, like you both.
Meanwhile, I can do the same fucking thing.
No, like, but like you both. So like if the question is right,
you didn't win.
But if the question is like, is the entire series, then no, absolutely. If that's the question,
which I said at the beginning of this, I was like, no, the whole series, nah.
Right, and I think
what he's trying to bring up. Okay,
sorry.
Go ahead.
No, what I think he's arguing specifically for Breath of the Wild, right? I think that in that specific case, he does have there's a footing there where Breath of the Wild is starting to. It's that first one that emerges as now we're hitting RPG status. The other ones are playing with the ideas. They're introducing some of the stuff, but it's still comfortably in that section of what you would say is an adventure game. Breath of the Wild, and I think why it's kind of blown up in such a way.
Now, can I say something really quick?
No, go ahead.
If you listen to that first episode, at least two of your arguments, I'm gonna say two of your arguments that I'm gonna just bring up just for the sake of it, because we got him here, is a grid-based structure. Listen to it again. That is one of your points.
When?
In that first episode. No, I'm saying that first episode, you mentioned the fact that like a grid-based structure. Oh, you're moving grid-based.
Probably in like the earlier ones, yeah. Oh, probably for the handheld ones.
No, literally, that's what you said was the handheld ones. Oh yeah, when you're playing the handheld one, that's an RPG. You know this. And that.
Yeah, it's like the handheld Game Boy ones, top-down RPG classics.
No.
Yeah, man.
No, that's not an RPG. You know?
Yeah, it is. There's side quests. You have to do things. You have to upgrade your weapon.
See, this was another question. I want to get your opinion on that.
Like, think classic Game Boy RPGs where you
No. Okay, you know what? I'm going to let you have it. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, if he's going to have a frame of
reference... No, I'm saying, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, go ahead. Okay. You know, like go ahead and tell him what you think.
Did you play classic Game Boy RPGs, Golden Suns, or...
Dabbled.
Okay.
Dabbled.
So... The way I see classic handheld Zeldas...
Just for the sake of the listeners, which games are you talking about? The first one, Link's Awakening.
You could do Link's Awakening. You could do the Oracle games.
Minish.
I don't know so much about the Minish.
How is that any different? I don't understand. Like, what is your distinction there?
the way the story's told, the way the gameplay is, it's different.
No, well, like to his credit, like there is a level of like feel, right? Like I know when I sit and play a game, and you can like
you said it
yourself.
No, that an RPG. If you were playing an RPG,
you know an RPG, yeah.
You know.
But you're saying like side quests. Do you consider side quests just side quests in general? I'm talking about like get rid of the argument of Zelda, right? Mm-hmm. Side quests. A side quest is a side quest
inherently
an RPG element.
No, but like I this is where I think like we're getting a little too like stuck in the weeds, right? Because we have like elements I don't think are deterministic necessarily of a thing, right? It's a combination of certain, we'll say, elements, right? Like if you have enough of certain if you imagine more like a threshold, right? If enough of these things are together, right, and let's say the meter is 30%, right? If 30% of the game have these elements and that's the threshold, right? Then I'm comfortably saying it's this thing, right? This is like an arbitrary number, like blah blah blah, right? I think that like if we say if you just have side quests, you're an RPG game. No, you're wrong. If you just have side quests, you're wrong. Mm-hmm. It's if you have side quests paired with a series of other things.
And what are those other things?
So, and like if that was before, like I was talking about like that immersive world and story. So like the world is deep and like you're kind of you have to.
I have it's such a visceral aversion
but I'm
to
not
that statement.
I'm not saying it's deterministic. I'm saying if you have this thing,
it's
an element that's important. Right?
I'm asking for that deterministic aspect.
But that's what I'm saying is what I'm saying is that's the root of where we're going to disagree.
Of where we're and you are disagreeing.
Yes. I think that you're too stuck on this static notion of what is a thing, especially when we've evolved past like where like we can only do so much, right? So like this is how we create our distinctions. In the same way that like you can have a novel that changes, that kind of dabbles in
is it
genres.
A horror novel? Is it a romance novel?
Right.
Well, it might have a little bit of both, and it might pull them both in.
Right. Or even like our conceptions of sci-fi have kind of evolved since when they first came out, right?
Yes, they have.
So I think that you're a little too stuck in like this is what we've traditionally been, right? And I think that at least as I experience games, we've kind of evolved past that.
Okay, I'll give you
that. So like our classics, right, have these things, and they're sort of our foundation, right? But we like at least as a genre has like a franchise, or not even just a franchise, rather like as an industry, like we've evolved where like we don't have to be stuck like that anymore, and it hits a threshold number as opposed to it needs to have this, right? Like so like JRPGs don't just have to be turn based. But when we see that, we go, okay, that's a familiar thing where I can attach that to.
And I can put that into the category of.
I can go, okay, that's one of those markers for like, okay, it might count for this, right? You know, like JRPGs, like you think about like culture, like they're usually it's grounded in a certain cultural perspective, right? Okay. That's unique to like the Western world.
Though. Well put. Like I got to give you some props there, brother. Like well put. And mind you, at the end of it. Has not changed my opinion.
No, I don't think.
Which was never the point. That was not. And I told you this the other night. That's it. It's fucking not. You know. But I see where you're coming from. This was the whole reason why I wanted to bring the debate up with you present.
Absolutely.
And you've actually gone above and beyond what I had originally intended. Like. No, I'm serious. Like, I'm giving you props. I'm giving you credit where credit is due. Like. You really did. You went above and beyond. You really got into the nitty gritty of, you know, what the actual sort of like my idea of distinction. You know, I don't think personally. I mean, like I don't know if it's just defensive of me. I also don't think that you're just talking about me. I also think you're talking about him.
No, absolutely.
In terms of a distinction being made, you know,
absolutely.
Where if someone's saying yes, this is an RPG, they're making a distinction as well. They're also putting in like if this is doing this and this and this and this, it is, and I'm just the only difference is the actual end result.
Right.
Whereas at the end of it, like the actual evaluation, the actual analysis is that of we're both putting them into these categories. We're both putting them into this viewpoint. You know, and at the end of the day. As I've said already, like I think 4 times before, you're not going to convince. Like, there's no convincing either of us of either viewpoint, you know. But acknowledging the fact that it's a little more nuanced than either of us had put it.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely, and that's what I've noticed from the both of you is that like you're trying to find like the silver bullet here. This is like if you have this thing here, universally, no matter what,
objectively it is, or objectively it isn't.
And I don't think you can do that. At least as I've experienced RPGs.
I give it to you
because
and Gene, as I think originally in the original text, in the original episode, you're allowed to believe what you believe. I'm allowed to believe what I am. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no. No, you guys have to change your mind. I've said this standard. You gotta agree with me. Who's
the winner? Who's the winner here? You know?
No, but if I had to like push you guys on a thing, it would just be to kind of
really, it's not. Listen to the same podcast again.
No, but really if I did have to push you guys on a thing, it's maybe stepping a little bit away from kind of our preconceived notions of what a type of game could be, right? Because I will use Borderlands as the example because this is one of those ones that really made me.
It's on that border.
No, but it's one of those ones that really made me rethink how I conceptually look at RPG games because there's way too many RPG elements in Borderlands for me to just say it's not one. Like there's just too many. Like for me, it crosses the threshold where if I call it a shooter, I'm being dishonest about the game. There is that immersive world. There's that level system, that skill tree. There's that illusion of player choice because I'm going to do these missions and I have to choose. Some missions I can choose what I'm doing. It even has like
Destiny was another one that you pulled up.
Yeah,
I was like, that's right there on the line. It's
and
right
Destiny
there on the
again.
line.
That's a game I played where like I went in thinking, this is Halo, so I'm gonna just I'm playing Space Halo, whatever. And then I get into it and it's like, wow, I have to rethink like what I thought of MMORPGs because like Destiny has really entered that kind of space where, by Destiny 3, maybe you're not even gonna have this argument anymore. You're gonna go, well, no, Destiny 3 did it. Like Destiny 3 is an RPG, guys. Like I've like you've done it again, right?
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I would push you guys on is like games just aren't that same static thing,
which is a good thing.
We no longer exist in a world where like you've got your Final Fantasy, you've got your the Need for Speed, the like what are the original Need for Speed, like this 2D like even racing games, right, are evolving past that, right? So we have to maybe step away from the idea of like it needs to have this, and this, and go how many of these things does it have, and where does based on the number of these things.
I feel like going through that same logic that you've presented, which I agree with. Like you've changed my mind on some things, Not on that, Gene. Like Gene. Okay, I gotta put this out there. I have to say this. Gene is standing there, attempting to look triumphant here.
I'm sitting here quietly, just to myself.
No. Look, they can't. Here's the thing. They can't see you.
They can't. But I'm sitting here.
You're
grinning. All right, I'm grinning.
You're acting like you've quote unquote won.
I'm satisfied with the result that our judge has given, and that's it.
But anyways,
whatever, man. You brought him in to be the specialist, and you were like, we brought you here to give the viewers a not definitive, but a
wider
easier
perspective.
Yeah, like way to wrap your mind around.
Okay,
it.
so what I was gonna say was, the idea that like genre itself is somewhat dead. Where the actual idea of something being something solo is something that is archaic.
Yeah, I think that.
Zelda being an RPG is an archaic statement. Zelda not being an RPG is also an archaic statement. Zelda is what Zelda is. If you enjoy the game, if you're it shouldn't matter what it is. At the end of the day,
yeah, no, absolutely right.
At the end of the day, if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. That's something. Curiosity: have you ever played a Zelda game?
There was one for the 64, and I don't know.
Ocarina of Time?
There we go. That's probably the only one I sat there and played. Yeah.
Did you beat it? Curiosity?
No,
just
not all the way through, but I played it. Okay, it's cool. Yeah.
It was a question that came up in season 1, so we were curious about it. But is at the end of the day, what you love is what you love, et cetera, et cetera. It's the old. I didn't even finish the statement because it's such a cliche. Yeah, you're gonna love what you're gonna love. Stuff like that. But what you've gotten me to kind of understand is the fact that these sort of labels don't add anything to that, like
the experience.
I was gonna say it doesn't add anything to the debate, but what I almost meant to say was like the debate is almost irrelevant. Like you finished the debate not by declaring a winner, but by declaring that the debate is irrelevant in and of itself. And mind you, people, I know you guys out there are still going to be like, yeah, it is, or no, it's not, you know? Mm-hmm. But what are you gaining by that? What's the point there, you know?
Yeah.
Find games that you love. Find games that you know, experience everything. I think that you also brought that up in terms of games that you've played that you finished, and at the end were like, that was shit. Why the hell did I waste my time with that? So I want to commend you on that. You know, that, you know.
Sorry I couldn't help you guys kind of decide that, but I hope you guys will accept it and agree to disagree.
No.
We brought you here to specifically not decide.
We did actually bring you specifically not to decide. But, you know, you apologized for not deciding, and you made the decision itself irrelevant. You know, in my opinion anyway. You know.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Absolutely. And, you know, like I said, I don't mean to take, like, you guys had both, like, very good points. I just think that...
Well, that's what the thing was all about, was getting the argument out there.
Absolutely.
Getting the actual information of, like, hey, do you see it this way? Do you see it that way? Is getting the people to look at it. And then strangely, at the end, it's like, who gives a fuck? You know? Where at the end of the conversation, at the end of the debate, it was like, oh, wait. I don't care.
No, and for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, you know, like 5 years from now, right? Like, I think that we'll have, like, a bunch of different games, right, that will, you know, push... I would say even, like, some of the, like, recent Need for Speed games, where, like, or, like, maybe it's not Need for Speed I'm thinking of, but, like, even they're kind of, like, stepping out of that racing game genre, where, like, a lot of other stuff is not... Like, you know, they're still racing, right? But...
That's not like Burnout Paradise?
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of, where, like, there's a lot more going on.
All right.
You know,
there's still cars run.
Yeah,
see, okay.
But like they're still driving. But
I'm not jumping back into it. I'm not. Like I've acknowledged this difference of opinion and where it has brought me in terms of you know my maturity in this actual aspect of understanding games a little bit better than I did before, which I appreciate. Like that's what I go for, brother.
Yep, absolutely.
Like that is more important to me than winning.
Mm-hmm.
But it just to bring up like a debate, right? Mm-hmm. Again, is like racing games are almost like an attribute of racing games is coming in first, being
absolutely.
Stuff like that. What's a sports game about? You know,
playing
the sport. You know,
and granted, fine. That was a bad example.
No.
But you're right. Those games are specific.
It's a bad example for what we were talking about, but it's a good example for what we were talking about. And what I mean by that is that like a racing game is a better description for a genre than something such as RPG and or adventure game.
Yeah, I could agree.
You know, adventure game or RPG is such a nebulous concept.
Those are more like tags.
Yeah, like there's something added on to something else as opposed to racing, where racing is a very solid, steadfast thing.
Yeah, and
that
I can agree with.
Fighting game is like you couldn't convince me that like Soul Calibur's not a fighting game.
Right. Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, there's no way around that.
Though this is just like a shameless plug. Like if you ever like have peeped the game like Noble Grand Blue Fantasy or something like that, Phantasm. Actually, it's a fighting game with an RPG mode that is side scrolling and you 2-player blah blah. Just throwing it out there that like even fighting games are like. They're pushing that envelope. If you ever have any chance, take a look at it. But sorry,
proving your point. Plug. Proving your point even better is like maybe 10 years ago there could have been these solid walls.
Yes.
However, those walls over the course of our lifetimes
have gone away.
or at least are dissolving. Like they may not all the way be gone.
Oh yeah, no. But they're like very thinly held up. It feels like now.
But yeah, exactly. There's a simulacra of what things quote unquote should be.
Yes.
And I agree with that premise of like you know what, we're past that. We're past these things being solid. So I want to commend you on that. Good job.
Gang.
So, and with that, or is there something you want?
No, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with all
I'm
that.
sure
right
you
there.
are.
Oh yeah.
And with that, I'm Vaughn.
I'm Gene.
I'm Jose.
And we are
the
Face
Face
Buttons. Have yourselves a wonderful evening.